Hello here, Mark Daniel Nelson in Santa Ana, California. Did a little pit stop. Gonna go check out Cameron Webb's studio. He's one of my favorite rock engineers. And I said, Warren, let's go see his studio. So I'm gonna do a tour today and ask a couple questions and see how it goes. Let's check it out.
Mark,
Ha!
how are you?
This is cool. Thanks a lot.
Are you done? All right. That's our tour for today.
Thank you.
Okay.
COVID hugs.
How are you?
I try to make up my hugs now about the last 2 years of not
Yeah.
touching elbows every time. So tell me a little bit about this place, the history of it, some of the albums that you've done, stuff like that.
Welcome to Maple Studios.
Maple. Okay.
Maple Studios was founded in 2002, November. It's coming up on its 20th year. The first record we did it was a band called Zebrahead on Columbia Records. We ended up doing about 4 of their records here after that. Since then, I started with doing Social D records. I did 2 Social D, Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll, and a greatest hits record, which are special. And then just tons of bands. I started working with Pennywise, did 3 records for them, No Effect. Bands like Silverstein, like emo screamo stuff. A lot of Warped Tour bands.
Yep.
I mean, the list goes on. If you
A lot of bands in vans.
tons of bands and Vans.
Those are the...
And Vans is right down the street, and I actually do work for Vans sometimes.
And I've got bands on.
Yeah.
So the reason why I thought this would be cool was because as much as I'm a huge rock fan and stuff like that, I just don't do very much of it anymore. And I just kind of, like you were saying earlier, like I really enjoy chatting with people and trying to understand how they get specific sounds, because half the time I listen to specific albums, like some of the punk stuff you've done, like the rock punk stuff, it's just this dirtiness sound that I'm just going, how does he do that? Because most of the time I'm trying to achieve that. It just sounds way too pretty and not a good way for the type of music. That's why I wanted to come by and see some of the magic of where some of the records that I really like.
So what I'll do is we'll walk in and I'll just show you a few things and I'll explain why I make it dirty or clean, or a lot of it's choices we're making. A lot of it comes from here, more so than what's in here. But
yeah. Okay.
Let's do it. Come on in.
Cool.
This
Thanks.
is the studio.
All right. All right, tell me when you moved in here, because I'm looking around.
And you're seeing weird stuff everywhere?
It's just Yeah, accumulated. I mean, it's a parachute on the ceiling.
Yeah, it's,
There's a skylight.
It's been 19 years and it's been built slowly as it goes. Just like anything you collect with audio gear, you don't buy it all at once. No one has that kind of money, or most people don't. And you slowly piece it together. I mean, part of this was I hated like a normal ceiling. So I'm like, let's put this like crazy like parachute up there. And we did, and it looks super fun. And then the lights are just, so it's less official, you know what I mean?
It's almost like a circus.
Yeah, you don't need it so serious, really.
And this is what I noticed earlier, that your far fields are sticking through, but then you have the added diffusion going with it.
So basically just it has more angles in the room, so less of a triangular room. There's Westlake audio speakers in there, and they sound good. And you're never cranking the Westlake audios while someone's singing in here.
Right.
So it's all right that they do that. And it kind of looks fun. It's funky and fun.
It is funky in a cool way.
Yeah. I think that my favorite studios are the studios that aren't normal and they have mistakes or weird doors that go nowhere, like places like Grandmaster Studios in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like, it's just more fun that way.
Well, there's a lot of character. There's a lot of history in here. I can feel it. It's like, it's an era that, I mean, you've had this for 20 years?
Had for 20, and before that had been a studio.
So this has been making music for a long time.
It's
Southern California punk
I'd
scene.
say the first studio here was definitely here in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been revamped a ton.
Sure.
So it's not the same place it used to be at all. But
the
music's been
overall-
going here forever. Yeah. For a long,
overall
long time.
vibe is definitely there.
And it's rare to have a studio last that long. I mean, you have Hollywood where you have your big studios, but you don't have small ones that are lasting long periods of time.
So did you do any of the Motorhead stuff here?
I did some mixing. I mixed a record called Motorizer here.
And
did
you were
some
pretty
guitars.
tight with Lemmy, right?
Yeah, Lemmy and I were great friends.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
I spent 12 years with him.
Wait a second. This Rickenbacker.
Yeah, it's one of his.
Wow. Are you serious?
I get to borrow it temporarily.
What about these? Because this looks familiar.
So this was his custom.
Look how huge this freaking cabinet is.
They made this for him in the early mid 2000s. Wow. And so this was his signature. And they said, hey, we're going to take one of your Super Bass 100s and we're going to make a modern version of it. So that's what that is. And then he said, well, I want fucking big speakers. So they gave him a huge speakers. And if you look, all the last
what about
series
this
of
one?
shows.
This one has this hammer. That's definitely his.
So that's a vintage one. That's basically what this came after, basically. And that cabinet underneath it is what we used for most of the Motorhead records that I did.
Oh my
we'd
God.
We'd run that, and sometimes we'd run one of these, or we had other setups too. So we would.
And the weird part was, it's like Lemming is known for, having just this massively gnarly bass sound. Did you ever take a DI with that?
Let's say, did I ever use a DI? No, I never used a DI. I don't record people in that style.
Yeah.
I record people like, hey, here's your amp.
Here's a band.
Turn it up. What do you sound like? Wow, that sounds like shit. Let's work on it. Wow, that sounds good.
That sounds like shit. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's record. Hit record.
This is super cool.
I think you got to capture an artist for what they are, and you can't run a DI and think you're going to find it later, because you won't.
Now, I saw this. Is this a blue? You said it was a blue?
It is a blue. I use it for a ride, Mike. It's cool. It's a fun little ride.
And these guys, what are these?
ATM 25s.
Audio Technicas.
Yep.
When I worked at Chicago Recording Company, they use these on toms all the time. And I used to really like are they hypercardioid?
I don't know what they are, but they're very similar to like a 421, but they're a little more modern, I think. I love them. I've used them for 20 years. I love it on kick drum too.
What's on your front kick?
It's called a McHugh Military. An old friend of mine who had a studio called The Distillery in Costa Mesa. Mm-hmm. He built it, and see that ammo shell back there? That ammo casing? Yep. That's the power supply.
Wow.
And that one's called the Ashley, which would have been his daughter.
Is it a tube?
It is a tube mic,
so
correct.
Is it kind of like the Ultec?
Yeah, it's based off an Ultec. Yeah, it's very similar to that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I see you do the same thing I do, which I don't see a lot of, is the snare cover.
Trying to get rid of the hi-hats and the cymbals.
It's amazing how many things I would do to try to make it go away. Obviously, for anyone that doesn't know what this is doing, it's probably cutting the hi-hat out by 30%. So that means you get 30% more freedom to add top end or compression or all this stuff before the cymbals start phasing them out.
The biggest trouble you have with fast drummers is that they start to hit the snare drum softer. And the softer you hit the snare drum, the more you have to brighten it up, and the more you brighten it up, you get cymbals, because your cymbals and your hi-hats are super bright. So all of a sudden, your snare drum becomes a hi-hat mic, and you don't want it to be. So this is a trick that, like, you know, it helps it. Does it solve the problem? Absolutely not, but it helps.
It was a massive, when I started doing that like 15 years ago, it was a massive help. And I also went and got some weird ones where I took a styrofoam cup.
Oh,
you put the 57 into the styrofoam cup. And believe it or not, that actually helped a lot, because most of the high frequency is above 3K or something like that. Anyways.
What I learned is you have to be a little bit careful with it, because if you put it too close to the head right there,
it changes the sound.
It sounds super weird, and it doesn't help your snare sound. So.
Oh, cool. And you got some room mics.
Yeah, I use different room mics. It depends on the session. So it's not that this is a certain thing, but
awesome.
You know,
and an 87. Gotta have your 87.
Yeah, that's a fun little 87.
Let's go in the control room.
Show you the control room. Come on, guys.
Come on, guys. This is Cribs. Come on. Thanks for coming to my apartment. So I want to know about this console. It's not a B, it's a C?
It's a Trident 80C, yes. Built in 1986. And it's very similar to the Bs. The mic pre's, they tell you, are the same mic pre's. EQs are similar. The monitor section has more selection on your EQs. It was more important in the 80s and 90s to have it like that. Nowadays, we're using less faders.
Right.
So, but it's still... If I want to roll something up there real fast, it's great. It's super easy and very accessible. Console sounds good. It's punchy, smooth, great for rock tones, great for anything, really.
Awesome. And then you've always been monitoring on Genelecs and NS10s?
I mean, I grew up on NS10s and Genelecs, and I know like things are changing, and the NS10s aren't really... Speakers in cars are way better than they used to be. So they're not like NS10s anymore. So, but it's what I'm used to. It's what I grew up on. Like, I can turn them up. I know what it's going to sound like when I take it elsewhere.
What are these far edge ones?
Those are called NHTs. It was like a prosumer company.
Oh, wait, I know what these. My old mentor had a smaller pair of the NH. They come with a biamp, right?
Yes, right over there.
With XLRs?
All these amps.
Yeah,
there's all,
cool.
They're pretty expensive.
Yeah,
they're pretty nice.
How they sounded.
Yeah.
He loved them.
They have a subwoofer that I actually use with the Genelecs. That's killer. I love it. It's super full and sounding, so it's great.
The other thing I noticed, you have about 7,000 compressors, which is what I like. And here's a funny thing. This 1176, the LN, I love this.
Yeah.
And I actually like it in a different way than an original 1176.
Okay.
I remember because I had years ago a 6176.
Right.
And the 6176, you could split it and only use the compressor. And we had an original Yuri as well. And it was very different sounding, and it was actually better on snare than the original, at least the ones we were using.
It's a little smoother, isn't it?
Yeah. It just had some kind of a grip thing that I really liked.
Yeah.
And then you had a 40. Okay, so the 436 is looking a little tired.
It's old. I mean, what do you do?
And that still works great?
Yeah, I mean, it works old. Yes, it works, and it's a little noisier, but that's what
it's old. Is this a CBS?
It is. It's a stereo CBS. Wow. You open it up.
Super limiter.
The only way to adjust it is like with a screwdriver. It's super old school.
Wow.
I use it for weird things like rooms or it's fun. It's like 1176 kind of.
What is this thing? Is this some very new?
These are old military compressors from 1941. It's called they're called Signal Corps. So this came from the same era as a BA6A or compressor like that, or Fairchild.
Yeah, because it has a plate current, so it might be a very new.
So I have two of them. There's one over there. You can't see it because it's behind all the Marshalls, but they don't sound the same, so you can't use them as a stereo pair. They just do one thing, and that's it. It's not like our good compressors like the Retro or something or even like the 436 that kind of you can utilize it on snare drums or bass or anything.
Right.
This, like, if you don't like it, turn it off and put something else on. But if you do like it, then you keep using it. So it's just
Obviously,
finicky. Old stuff's finicky.
and it's funny you have these Grace Pre's, which are obviously known for being very clean.
Yes. They're clean, but they're very similar to the Trident. I use them for vocals. That's my lead vocal chain, is one of those Grace.
And then you pick it up with the retro.
He knows my trick. He doesn't even know what I patched in. Yes. What other compressor am I using with it for my vocal? You tell me.
It is stressor.
Yes. See? It's a great chain. There's a guy named Dexter Simmons. Is that name familiar at all? He was a mixer that I worked with in like the late 90s, and he would love the Grace stuff. I remember he brought one of these way back when and showed it to me.
I remember I listened the difference between a Grace and the Millennial and the Avalon, which were all very similar kind of clean preamps. And the Grace probably sounded the most expensive out of all of them. They were very clean. Yeah. And I agree. The vocal is important to get, like, pure.
But it's not as clean as this. It adds more. To me, it's more Neve-esque than it is a Focusrite. That's what I just pointed at.
So these 4 are 1272s? You said they're
so these actually came from Chicago. My friend Johnny K. They belong to Johnny K. He's a Chicago producer, worked with The Disturbed and Three Doors Down, and I've known him forever. So these, they took out of like an 80 series console. They're the line amps. And they found a way to mod them to be a cross between a 1073 and a 1081. So you'll see these.
Well, I thought the 1272s were line amps off of the...
It's been modded to be made a mic pre, not a line amp.
And they're real.
And they're real. They're really old.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And really I know my friend Ty loves the Dankin or the Dankin compressors.
Yeah, they're fun.
Now the difference is between these two. This is a smart, and then this is a
they're
real
both
one?
smart.
Oh, they're both smarts. Okay.
One is just like, they're just two different models. This is the fancier model, and this is the more basic model.
Do you have this SPX 90 for the Andy Wallace reverb that he liked?
what reverb does he like?
I don't remember. I just remember he liked the SPX 90 for one setting.
I don't know. Terry Date loves it for like a vocal chain for the Deftones as well.
I love the Deftones.
I love it. It's great. I have a tendency to utilize some of these tricks within Pro Tools. I patch around and get to them when I'm mixing, because there's great stuff in the box, but this stuff is like, I know what it does, so I just go to that sometimes.
There's just so much character to choose from. Believe it or not, I remember buying a couple 160s for $75 a channel. They were the X, and there was an XT.
That's a steal. I've always seen them for $200 for
but they're
the last
always
30
great.
years.
And that's still ridiculously inexpensive. And don't quote me, but I believe the circuit on a 160X is really close to the compression circuit on an SSL. Very similar typology VCA.
I don't know.
Way different than the 160 VU.
Right.
I'm probably going to be told I'm wrong.
No, you're
Ross
right.
at SSL will probably call me and tell me I'm wrong. But
you're right.
If I remember correctly, that it had the same VCA. So this is the AMS delay.
DMX.
Okay.
AMS DMX.
I don't think I've ever used this. I do know that they came in a pair and that there's a remote. David Kokla at Studio Electronics makes a remote that can control both the reverb and the delay.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, go on his site.
It's three things. It's a delay, it's a reverb, and it's a sampler. It's an 8-bit sampler. So this is one of the early triggering systems.
Yeah.
I could put in a kick drum in here, and I could nudge it back and forth to right where it hits, and I could fire another kick drum into it, and then it kicks it. It triggers it off.
And it has that sound.
And it's definitely 8-bit, so it crunches the sound a little bit. It's unique.
What's the reverbs on this thing?
Doesn't have reverb. It's delays.
Got it.
So it's either delay or it's also a harmonizer, because basically a harmonizer you move the timing and then you can pitch it down. Okay. So it's a harmonizer. So I guess it's a pitch shifter as well. That's what it is.
So when we walked in here,
let's look at the old stuff.
There's some weird shit in the closet. Here. So let's look in this guy. the first thing I noticed was the Fairchild spring. I've seen these before, but I've never seen it in person. And you use it?
So I love this spring reverb. It's awesome. It sounds so good. It sounds like the 60s. My friend at Audio International was like a company up in Ojai. He was getting rid of a bunch of gear, and that was one of the things I bought from him. And then more recently, I saw that there's a company that's making this now, that's making a plug-in that sounds very, very similar. But this one's a little bit wild sounding.
Atura?
It's something in England. I'm not sure where it is exactly.
Okay. I love spring reverbs. I mean, that's the character of most of these. Great.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it has like 3 different notches on it. So there's 3 springs. There's a spring here, here, and here. So if you got 1 on, it's short, 2 is medium,
great,
3 is long.
Did you get this from the same guy?
Yeah, same guy.
Okay, so this thing clearly is a tape delay.
Yes. It's called a Philips tape delay. And there's a book about English studios that talk about this delay. And they talk about making this in the 60s. And
you can adjust the heads for the timing?
Yes.
What?
You basically have to take an Allen wrench out and you just have to move them.
I'd like to get more information on this.
So it spits out 4 different outputs when it goes to the console. So it's
Was
basically...
this made during quad or something? Why would it have 4 outputs?
Well, for each one of these delays. So you could have the short delay, the long delay, and you can just tweak them a little bit and you can get them there.
Each one has its own sound.
Each one has its own output. So as 1 input goes in and 4 outputs come out. When I was telling you earlier, there's a bunch of there's like 13 tubes in the back. When I first got it, it didn't work because all these tubes were missing. So I just replaced them all. But it's funny because it's like an old school. You have to turn it on and you have to let it warm up and you have to start it up. It's not plugged in.
It's like a Leslie.
Yeah, it's like a Leslie. So it's not plugged in right now.
So funny.
But yeah.
This Altec Varimio, right?
Okay, that's basically my Fairchild. That is, I think, the best.
It is a good condition. Too.
That is one of the best compressors in the whole world, I think. I think it's better than a Fairchild some days.
322C.
You run a vocal through this, it just smooths it out and it sits it in the pocket.
Ooh. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, real knobs.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Nice
So basically this compressor, when I originally got it, it came from a church. And I've told the story before, but it was one more time. It was in a church in Los Angeles and they were getting rid of it. So I donated a couple $100 and they gave me this. It didn't work. So I had to build a power supply for it. I had someone help me out. So we built a power supply for that. His name is Marc Gruber. And now I run my lead vocal through it on almost every record. It's awesome. So smooth, perfect.
And then you have the Joe Meek stuff.
Yeah.
That guy's good. V2 or the original?
I don't know what it is.
Is that an ST2?
I think it's one of the original ones.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Is this a 3-track Porta Studio thing?
So this Nakamichi.
That's got to be fun.
Okay, so I got all these cassette tapes from Motorhead, and they were from the 80s. They belonged to Lemmy, and we had to do transfers. So I got as many cassette decks as I could, and I A-B'd all of them to see what was the best cassette deck. And I got this Nakamichi, and it sounds 10 times better than any deck you've ever seen. It's so awesome. It's super clean. I mean, it's like, you've never heard a cassette like this before. So this is like one of my prized possessions. Kind of unique. It's it's not necessary for everything, but
that's the thing. It's
for
all
transferring.
It
has like outputs that are like if you had a normal cassette deck, it would be half the level of this. This is like super high, and it's really, really cool. Old as can be.
Clearly, there is a massive amount of history in here. I mean, you've done some pretty special records that I've actually appreciated over the years, and I'm just trying to get a sense of it. It's almost like you can feel the beaver on the floor, just this vibe of this great history in this building. And I just appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm trying to make
anything to add, let me know.
Make history every day. I'm trying to make new bands, help out new bands, new artists, and just keep doing it.
What is this fascination with engineers and toys?
They're gifts. Lemmy gave me that.
I'm not picking at it because I have tons of toys. It's just amazing how we.
But when a friend says, "Hey, I got this toy they made of me. Do you want it, Cameron?" You're like, "Sure." And then your friend who skateboards, Steve Caballero, says, "Hey, you need one of these for your studio. It can be next to Lemmy." So then you're like, "Let's put them all there."
It's a great way to end it.
That's what it is.
Thanks for watching, guys.